Welcome to Master of Science with host Professor James McCanney. The good professor's career spans 50 years as a university teacher, scientist, and engineer. Each week, he will explore the rapidly changing world of science as many long-held theories are crumbling under the weight of new data. He will cover the fields of geology, archaeology, meteorology, oceanography, space science, astronomy, cosmology, biological evolution, virology, energy, mathematics, and more. So please welcome the host of Master of Science, James McCanney.
Good evening, everybody. Episode 81 in the ongoing series, and tonight I'm going to pull together a lot that has been happening lately, and these are all related, and you wouldn't know that by watching any of the other sources out there. Mainly, okay, let's talk about 3i Atlas. I'll cover that a little bit tonight. Some updates. All about the disclosure movement. Oh my goodness. Today I saw, was it Alex Jones had Dr. Stephen Greer on. And I'll go into this, and a lot of you are going to be very surprised, maybe disappointed. Most people out there want to believe in aliens, that there are aliens out there they visited, that the government knows all about them. And they've been reverse engineering technology. This is what they want to hear. That's what they believe has been going on. And then, of course, the way these misinformation programs are structured is to put the carrot out in front of the horse. You know, the old days they'd put a carrot out in front of a horse, and the horse would run down the road chasing the carrot. That's where the expression comes, chasing the carrot. And that's what they're doing with the well-crafted misinformation program that's been going on for, 50, 60, 70 years with the public. And the public just keeps jumping at that carrot, hoping to get it on the next, to run down the road. And right now it's at full steam ahead. All of these misinformation programs, the 3i Atlas, the disclosure movement, weather modification, pick a field of interest. A lot of these things are hot topics for the public, and they're all totally controlled. This is let me go back a number of decades to about 2004. I was one of the lead speakers at the UFO Congress in Laughlin, Nevada. And I met a person there who at the time was head of MUFON in Los Angeles. And something that I had known all along, because I'd been in Los Angeles. I'd been in the venture capital groups. I've been into private military meetings with my electric propulsion system, giving lectures at Los Alamos. So as an independent scientist, I've been on the inside. I've had people come up and talk to me and want to know, how do I know so much about what I know about? Because they'd worked on private projects that I actually designed. And they were working on them within the laboratories. And they said, there's no way you could possibly know about this. And I said, well, I designed these programs. And then I was alienated, to use a funny word, from these, because I wouldn't play ball with the big boys on the inside, in the aerospace corporations or in the CIA operated and managed space agencies, etc. So, but anyway, I asked this person who was head of MUFON LA at the time, Los Angeles section which is the biggest one. And this person told me that, these organizations, at the time Skywatch was active, totally CIA operated by Bill Hamilton and the crew, the programmers, the Promise Software programmers, and but operating this operation called Skywatch, where they had offices all over the world And the whole goal was if there was anything that came in that was real relative to aliens or UFOs or contact or the various levels of contact of human beings, that it would come into these field offices and be filtered and then sequestered. Any people or information would be sequestered. And the government, what we might call the government, the CIA is the police force for the World Bank. So this all goes back to the Vatican. And this is what I'm going to give you a rundown on who's operating all this. Why are they operating it? Why don't they want my information, the real theoretical work for how comets work? Because it would blow their gig. The Avi Loeb, he's the other side of the misinformation campaign. He's controlled. He's the controlled opposition. And of course, his story is that this is alien technology. Well, if you could explain to the public in large that, hey, this is just plasma discharge comet model doing its thing. This comet is just moving a little faster, so it's breaking down the gradient of the solar electric field and causing a larger discharge than normal. But other than that, it's just doing its thing. It's interacting now with Jupiter electrically. It interacted electrically with Mars. They hid the data. And all of the things like the fact that this material is not coming off the nucleus or X-rays or the sunward spike or the various plasma discharges that are visible with the comet, or the list goes on and on and on. These are all explained easily and predicted literally by the plasma discharge comet model, 50 years ago. And so at any rate, but the point is, if the public were educated relative to this, then like Avi Loeb is using the using the dirty snowball comet model when he's not talking about alien technology. And so the underlying theme of that whole misinformation campaign regarding 3I Atlas doesn't matter if you listen to Avi Loeb or NASA or the yo-yos on the internet with YouTube channels or the NASA-generated AI, all these fake AI YouTube channels that are out there pumping out huge amounts of misinformation. They all have one common theme, and that is the dirty snowball comet model. So they need that. They have needed that. And this goes back decades and decades, close to a better part of a century now, when Werner von Braun stated that the end game to bring about the New World Order, which was in works back then, the end game was false flag alien invasion. So they're building up to that now. It's in the news. You've had 60 Minutes involved. You've had the mainstream media involved. Fox News. They're trying to get Trump to admit that there is alien technology. Well, Trump doesn't know. He's a businessman from New York. He doesn't have any history of understanding what's really going on. I do. I've been on the inside. I've seen what's going on. I have 2 electromagnetic propulsion system designs that I designed that for working with electromagnetic fields instead of inertial rockets with chemicals. That's not the way to go into space. And here you got the Artemis mission. Another joke and a half. I mean, they just rolled it back to the staging building because the thing doesn't work. It was supposed to be launched in 2019. It's 2026. NASA's goal was be to the moon by the end of this year. Good luck, buddy. And I'll tell you, I would not want to be one of those astronauts sitting on top of that powder keg. It's just one flaw after another. And they concentrate on these like helium or hydrogen leaks. But no, that baby is full of just bad engineering. And it's, something that big, that complicated, they need at least a dozen launches, successful launches, before they start putting people on that thing. But they're on a timeline. They're under the gun. They got to get it done. Then they got to get men to land on the moon. That's difficult. Going around the moon, like this Artemis 2 mission, going around the moon and coming back is relatively easy. if you didn't have to go through the Van Allen belts, which they really don't know about. And what they're going to do, if they ever get this baby launched, is they're going to go into high Earth orbit, and come back and just test out the water, so to speak. Excuse me. There and see what happens, but they're going to have a few surprises, boys and girls. The last time anybody went out of low Earth orbit that we have on record, really going outside of low Earth orbit, is when the shuttle astronauts, I don't know the actual launch, which actual shuttle it was, but they went into up, about 150 miles into the lower end of the proton Van Allen belts, and they had the eyebrows and the eyelashes and hair, the people's, like when those kid experiments, you're in a classroom and somebody stands up on a wooden stool and touches the Van de Graaff generator and their hair all goes out like this. Well, that's what was happening with the astronauts. They were starting electrical discharging off their eyebrows, and they brought them down very quick. Interestingly enough, I forgot to mention this too on previous shows, that this unloading all the people from the International Space Station just happened to coincide with the interaction of Earth with 3I Atlas, and a very strong electrical discharge when 3I Atlas connected to Jupiter, and those interacted with Earth, and that's what gave us all that remarkable weather in January. It's finally subsided now. We're finally out of that stream. We were still getting tinges of it last week when I was doing the show last week. But isn't it interesting that they just hauled all those people out? So what happened at the space station? Of course, they're not going to tell you. In NASA never a straight answer fashion. But anyway, what happened is they had a major electrical discharge from 3I Atlas and Jupiter. I tell this story again. Where this first started, where the knowledge of this first started, was in the mid-90s. I was going about my regular business. I get a phone call from the military, and U.S. military, and they had sent a satellite up. They had sent a satellite up into orbit around Earth, and its job was to measure particles, high-energy particles, anything up to cosmic rays, relativistic protons. And all of a sudden, one day, they get this blast of electrons, and it's connecting to, they can see it's connecting to Jupiter. And it's going, what the heck's going on? So I get a call, what's going on with the electrons? They wanted to see my opinion. I said, oh yeah, that's Jupiter's connecting in to its discharge. And here's, let me see, get my head out of the way. On this side here, there's a drawing of a small comet, and the planets are doing the same thing. They're discharging the solar capacitor. And so Jupiter has the largest, being the biggest planet, a major contributor, has the biggest discharge, cross solar system discharge, and it can connect in with Earth's, which is much smaller. And so the whole point of crossing the gradient, since the planets are in circular orbits, they really don't cut the gradient of the electric field as much, very little, but they're still discharging the solar capacitor. So when these currents align, we see this, we connect into this electrical circuit with Jupiter. And thus the electrons. And why electrons? Because remember the red auroras a few weeks ago? We were having all these red auroras. Those are electrons, high-energy electrons from the 3I Atlas and Jupiter, from their connection. And why are they electrons? Because on the sunward side is negative, and the solar corona is a sea of relativistic electrons. The positive side is the positively charged ion cloud that is out beyond Pluto. That's the cross solar system capacitor, held back by solar wind pressure, and the solar wind has an excess current of protons. This is all in my work. You can read about it in my books and published papers. Okay, and so when Jupiter, when we connect into this discharge, the primary charge carrier is in the form of electrons, because the charge to mass ratio is 2,000 times that of a proton, millions of times more than dust particles, and about hundreds of thousands of times, if not millions of times more than molecules that are in the same discharge. So primarily it's electrons. That's why the military measured electrons. And they didn't know why. Why are there electrons flying around in outer space? Well, that's it. So I started the discussion of the Jupiter winds because associated along with that, they drive the jet streams, the ionospheric jet streams, which are coupled into the 5-layer magnetic field, plasma magnetic field that surrounds Earth, and drives that, and it drives successively down, successively down through our atmosphere down to the troposphere where we live, in the troposphere, and that gives the straight line winds that I call the Jupiter winds. That's the physical process. Okay, well anyway, that's where this started. So, getting back to the space station, the getting all the astronauts out of there, a couple weeks ago, that's because 3I Atlas was connecting with Jupiter. Those are two major cross-solar system electrical discharges, and they're connecting here with Earth. And what's up there in the sky? The space station, the International Space Station. And of course, they're not fitted for, they don't know. In the design, there's no design for lightning arresters in outer space. They don't even know it exists. And so certainly so it's just a sitting, it's basically a bug in a bug zapper in outer space. And so they had to get those guys out of there. Probably a lot of cancer in those people. Because what happens, the electrons hit the metal in the space station or spacecraft, as with the Artemis, what's going to happen with that. But the electrons connect mainly with metals and generate X-rays. Now, Artemis has the advantage that there's a lot less metal because they're using a lot more composite material today than they did back in the Apollo days. And that's one of the big issues. One of the major questions about the Apollo program is how did they manage to get through the Van Allen belts? And they're like, oh, no problem, no problem. Well, how come there's a big problem today? How come they had to unload all of these astronauts from the space platform there? Okay, so anyway, that's another story. I don't want to go too far down that road, but it hooks into all of the misinformation that's going on right now with 3I Atlas. So why do they have to keep, what's this dog and pony show about? Okay, so it's all connected. It's all connected. The disclosure movement, 3I Atlas, and 3I Atlas is very much related with Avi Loeb on one side saying it's alien technology, and boy, has he got in the press. And, ruined his reputation as a, because astrophysicists are probably the most conservative lot of people you'll ever meet in your life. You cannot make any change. And that drove me nuts. And Avi, I like Avi Loeb in some aspects because he's bucking the system. But also, he's, and excuse me, but part of the disinformation campaign because he's pumping the dirty snowball comet model when he's not talking about alien technology. And so that's part of the misinformation campaign. So they have to keep driving this. And oops. Okay, so let me go through this whole scenario just so it's very clear. The end game is the false flag alien invasion, or this controversy over, in a sense, it's a false flag because all the misinformation coming out, and let me be clear, nobody is going to give you real information in spite of your hopes, in spite of your all the people out there chasing the alien carrot, information carrot. It ain't going to happen. They're not going to let out any real information at all coming from either side. This is the biggest dog and pony show. Let me tell you, I'm not going to name names, but everybody that you see involved in this, whether they work for Trump, whether they're agents, whether they're in the military, whether they're in independent disclosure, studying for decades, trying to get things done, it's all bullshit. That's the best word I can use. Excuse me if there's children in the crowd, but actually you should learn that word at a young age because, excuse me, the world is so full of it. But okay, so the end game here is to convince you, the public, that there's an alien benefit, that all this technology is going to come and we're going to be off oil and we're going to have endless energy and everything is going to be good and the aliens are wonderful. And then the other side, oh no, the aliens are terrible. They're going to hunt us down. They're going to eat us for food. They're going to crossbreed with humans. Whatever horrible thing that you can imagine aliens might do, they're going to do. And we need a defense network. We need an umbrella. We need a three-dimensional space shield against all alien threats. Whatever side you're on, it's all BS. It's all BS. And the whole point is to get you, the public, fixated on this issue of aliens so that, guess what, boys and girls? We need a one world organized government to organize or to do good or to fight them or to whatever your perspective is. We need a one world government to do it. And this has been going on, like I said. Warner von Braun talked about this. His secretary said that he listed 4 things. The first 3 have already come to pass. The 4th one is coming to pass as I speak tonight. And so let's look at some of the aspects of this. I'll go through the disclosure baloney and that 3-ring circus that's been going on for decades. But let's first just do the science relative to comets, the 3-eye atlas deal. Okay, so 3-eye atlas is discovered, and this whole dog and pony show misinformation campaign had been crafted long before 3-eye atlas, this little comet, ever showed up on the scene. But it fit the bill pretty well, because just look at cometary science. They have, in spite of all of the great instrumentation that they have, that NASA has, and satellites around other planets that can see comets and everything, they haven't done anything relative to comets. And a lot of information is coming out now where NASA has been getting data, but they've been hiding it because they don't know what it means. Like a good one is redshift. Why do comets put out a redshift? Well, I explained that. It's explained in my original papers. It's the induced electric dipole redshift, and comets are charged because of the discharge of the solar capacitor that creates the charge on the comet nucleus. And so you're getting a redshift. And that's explained. I talked about this in 1986 when scientists went to South America with spectrometers on telescopes, and they took of Halley's comet, they took spectral analysis, and it was redshifted. When the comet was moving towards them, it should have been blue shifted, but the data was redshifted, and they're going, well, they threw the data out because it didn't make any sense. I knew what it meant. I had already explained that in my papers, which were published in 1979 to 81 when I was at Cornell. There's no surprise. So anyway, NASA has done extremely, they let out, for example, the X-rays, the Rosat satellite X-ray discovery, which was an accident, complete accident, and then 15 years NASA is trying to convince you that it's ion exchange, some process, magical process that just came out of the clouds one day, because and there again, I predicted that in my 1981 paper. It's right in the summary. What is the difference between the plasma discharge comet model and, at the time, it was called the ice ball comet model? And I said that one of the biggest discernments was that you will find X-rays to the sunward side of comets, and that's right here, this yellow portion in this comet diagram of this drawing was done in 1986 with a paper that I published. It was called Dynamics of a Small Comet, and presented that at an American Geophysical Union meeting. I mean, this is not secret, but it's been just basically shadow banned to the nth degree. Let me give you an example. When I started this TV show in July of 2024, my radio show goes back 25 years, but this particular the TV show, the Master of Science TV show, when it started, I had all of this information available, and I put it out there. But my show was expanding, and this is when it was being aired out of the studio in New York City. And I just looked at some of the numbers a little while ago. Early on, within like 4 or 5 shows, I was getting 16,000, 20,000 views a week. And then it went exponential. I was getting 250,000. And then all of a sudden, magically, the studio shut down. They had over 100 hosts, but mine was the show that was going exponential. It was going viral. And they just shut it down. The CIA came in, boom, pulled the rug out from under it, and because it was very necessary for them to keep my information from going viral. At the time, they were planning this whole disinformation campaign about comets. And so the whole idea that a comet would be an alien spaceship, that wasn't explained by standard comet science, was the story. And of course, NASA represents the dirty snowball comet model they have for, that's been their baby since time immemorial. Was actually originated by Kepler in the Middle Ages, when they thought, well, these things come near the sun and they develop this tail that's in the other direction, must be like an icy conglomerate that melts. So it was actually Kepler who designed this dirty snowball comet model originally, and then it got revived in 1950 by Fred Whipple when they had to come up with an excuse because Velikovsky was talking about comets becoming planets. And they said, no, that couldn't be true. And Velikovsky is selling his books worldwide, talking about Venus being the comet and then becoming the planet Venus, that the comet became the planet. And that's in the Popol Vuh, it's in the Mayan literature, it's in the Inca literature, that Venus, the comet, Quetzalcoatl, I called it, became the planet Venus, the plumed serpent god of the night sky whose heart became the planet Venus. That's the story. And so anyway, back to the idea of maintaining this dirty snowball comet model. Well, they needed it because you have NASA on the one side saying comets are dirty snowballs, and then you have which turns out to be Avi Loeb, is the main character that comes in and gets all of this fame, all of this YouTube impetus, and all of these other people backing it up with, it's an alien spaceship, and they show pictures and artist conception. There was an untold amount of money and time and talent that went into creating these AI videos, artificial intelligence videos, and then the amount of push for Avi Loeb to become super famous on all of the major TV and radio stations and in the press and publications, and now peer-reviewed journals are publishing it. Some of them know it's like controversial. Well, there's no controversy. There wouldn't be a controversy if NASA was honest and acknowledged my work. That's as simple as it is, because my work explains all of the features that they're seeing, the redshifts, the fact that the material does not come off the nucleus, that it's coming in from another place, on and on and on, the X-rays to the sunward side. I mean, there's a list of about 20 things that my theoretical work explains that has no chance of being explained by the dirty snowball comet model. But see, NASA comes back and says, oh no, the dirty snowball comet model explains this. And they look like a bunch of idiots, which they are, because the dirty snowball comet model doesn't explain any of it. But they need that, so then Avi Loeb can say, well, no, it's alien technology. Avi Loeb wouldn't be able to say it's alien technology if NASA acknowledged my work, that this is all explained by the plasma discharge comet model. So this is the dog and pony show that's going on right now. And there are people digging into databases now, individuals who look like individuals. I don't know if they are. They all seem to disappear in the woodwork like cockroaches when the lights come on, when beset with the reality that all this is explained. And there's a reason for that, because they absolutely need and have needed all along to maintain this dirty snowball comet model. Are these astrophysicists like Carrie Liss really that stupid that they can't see what they're doing? Liss just came out with a thing dealing with, they're showing that there's redshift in the tail, and there's other things. And I mean, and then they come up with these fantastic stories. No matter what data comes in, they're going to put a Band-Aid on it. They're going to put a Band-Aid on their dirty snowball comet model. But are they really that stupid that they can't see that this is, that it doesn't, what they're doing doesn't make any sense? That as soon as you peel back the first onion layer, that you have a bias in the tail with material moving in one direction, and you interpret it as material moving and a special relativistic redshift? Well, of course, it's just foolishness. Okay, so anyway, they have to maintain this because they got to keep the dog and pony show of the alien aspect of it. That wouldn't exist if they recognized my work, pure and simple, because it explains all of the aspects of Comet 3I Atlas. And they need the dirty snowball comet model, which looks foolish. And even though NASA stands up there and beats its drum and says, oh, this is explained, nobody believes them. Every time NASA opens their mouth, Avi Loeb gains points. He looks like a race car driver from the Indy 500. He looks better every time NASA opens their mouth and says something stupid. So that actually bolsters, by NASA being there and being stupid, supporting the dirty snowball comet model, they actually bolster Avi Loeb. And when Avi Loeb is not talking about alien technology, he's using the dirty snowball comet model. Hey, isn't that swell? And then you've got all of the other YouTubers out there that are following along with that theme also. And what does the public get? a big mess. And the other thing is that the idea that these comets are little in their little local events. I was the only one talking about 3I Atlas and Jupiter affecting Earth's weather. That whole month of January, 40 foot in one day of snowfall in Russia, all of those big storms, 2 hurricanes off the Carolina coast that just came in and dumped snow for days and days. How do you get 2 hurricanes in the middle of January off of the Cape Hatteras? Boys and girls. And then it was still going on, the straight line winds. We had constant straight line winds, and I even predicted the correct date when it would start. But anyway, okay, so that's this aspect of the dog and pony show, the psyops. And you see, it all revolves around the alien issue. That's the point. Now let's talk about disclosure, what's going on. Disclosure has been, talk about a dog and pony show. You got your Stephen Greer on the one side, and I have stories that I can tell about some of these people, and they're not real. That's all I can tell you. They're not real. in spite of, how do you, this is the one thing you always look at, is what is their source of income? How do you manage for 25 years or more, or 30 years, living in this world we live in with no visible source of income? Isn't that interesting? It's just money appears, they have conferences, they travel around the world, they're on television, they're on the Alex Jones show today, all of this. Where does the money come from? This is not a cheap operation. This is not a cheap operation. And so that's the first ding red flag that anybody should look at, is the invisible income that is always there. Because I can tell you, I've been in this business a long time as a true independent, and it's not a highly profitable business. It's not the money is just not flowing in off the money tree. Okay, so that's one side of it. Then you've got Trump, the president, and they're egging him on to make some kind of disclosure announcement, announcing that the U.S. has had alien technology and they've been reverse engineering it for decades. They're trying to get Trump to say this, and they're trying to get him to say it now. He was going to wait till June and make an official announcement after study, but they want it now because they're getting antsy. They're getting antsy because the public is demanding answers, and there's little trust. Let me just say that again. There's very little trust amongst the public in anything government. You've got you've got so many things that went into, say, the Justice Department that have been buttonholed. They went in and nothing has come out, and everybody's aware of what I'm talking about there. I don't have to say the name or the names of those particular projects, but and then there's this fight going on where one side, the disclosure side, says, oh, the guys over there in the government are bad, and then the guys in the government are going, oh, that guy over there is bad. This controlled opposition. They say, let me explain something to you, and I'll get in a little more advanced here, but when the CIA creates a misinformation program, they always create both sides of the narrative because then they can control it. They don't want some independent like me out there talking to you and giving you real information and telling you that, hey, both of these sides are bogus, just like with the Dirty Snowball Comet Model NASA and Avi Loeb. They're both goofy, but that's the dog and pony show. And with the disclosure movement, it's the same. Whether you're looking at weather modification, it's the same. They got their independent out there that looks independent, money coming in under the table. And then you got your government sources like NOAA and NASA and the people that talk about the Hurricane Prediction Center, which puts out completely bogus information. All of this misinformation, or take nuclear fusion, another topic in which there's total misinformation for the public. When it comes to you, the public, I'm talking about that. What you get to see, like for example, Trump just signed this executive order trying to move us into a world of fusion energy. And fusion energy is very simple. I mean, it's extremely simple, and they keep building these monstrous machines. One of my shows I talked about this, about the fusion quagmire, you might call it, the inability of them to reach unity, as it's called. In other words, break unity and get more energy out than you put into it. But that doesn't count all this big machinery that they built to try and make two atoms fuse, and it's really not a practical machine. The accelerators and the machines they have built over the decades are not. It's not the way fusion works. Fusion is a very simple process, very simple process. And like when I was working with the Russians in the mid-90s, we had it down. We already knew what the formula was for nuclear fusion, and it was the explanation for what happened at Tunguska, for example. The ground level explosion at Tunguska was a electrical discharge that came from a passing small comet. And at the base where it connected, where that electrical discharge connected, is basically a pond, which when the discharge hit, it vaporized that. So you have vaporized water. Now the water separates. There's enough energy to separate the water, so you have free hydrogen, and boom, there was an explosion about 20 times that of the bomb at Hiroshima. And it was due to an electrical discharge that came in. But you got your Joe Rogan show and the pretend scientists that he has on there going, oh no, it was a bolide coming in and all these, meteorites hitting the earth caused all these catastrophes. No, that's not true. That's not true. And the Russian scientists that I worked with were on site. There was no residue from a bolide exploding in the air 100 miles up or something like that. The explosion was at ground level. I mean, we're talking 50 feet off the ground level. And immense explosion, because all the trees at ground level from that little pond outwards all the branches were just singed off, burned off, and the trunks falling down in a radial pattern going out for 20 miles. It was a big explosion. It was heard in Paris. It was from Siberia. They heard it in Paris. Yeah. So anyway, it wasn't a bolide hitting the atmosphere, excuse me. But that's what they're pumping today on misinformation shows like Joe Rogan's show. Joe Rogan's totally controlled. He's got a lot of good information. I like listening to him. But when it comes to real information regarding science and these major issues, he's very controlled, very controlled. And the people he has on his show are very controlled. Okay, so anyway, it's important to understand this because there's a lot of effort going into this dog and pony show regarding aliens, because this is their ticket to the New World Order, and they're getting worried. The people that have been waiting and planning and getting this together. Now, let me go through that whole scenario, that whole hierarchy. And here's the way it works. You got NASA, that's the space agency, and typically what you see there is Tier 2 or Tier 3 baloney. You got your Neil deGrasse Tysons, who are Mr. Standard Science, who's out there pumping the party line constantly, making sure that it's all correct. You have news release agencies at NASA, Tier 2, Tier 3 level, to make sure those guys don't step out of line and say something that they're not supposed to, like Michael Brown. Remember when he was releasing his first, he's the guy that discovers the minor planets out in the Kuiper Belt. And when the Sedna announcement came out, they had a news conference. And so they were talking to Michael Brown, and he's, at that point, I think he was a graduate student or just recently got his PhD, and he's in charge of this automated search program. Comes in the middle of the night to look at his data, and he sees this new planet, discovers Sedna. And so anyway, the news media is talking to him, and the guy from Reuters says, well, what if one of these would come into the inner solar system? And in his infinite ignorance, as a young green behind the ear graduate student, doesn't know anything about Velikovsky or the history of that or anything, because they keep it away from these students, astronomy, astrophysics students. Michael Brown goes, oh, well, if it came into the inner solar system, it would be one of the biggest comets we'd ever seen. and the backpedaling that occurred in the next 2 days, because they didn't want a planet coming into the inner solar system becoming a comet. They didn't want that association because of Velikovsky. They've been trying to keep, comets and planets away from each other as much as they could, because comets are supposed to be little teeny things, you see. And so anyway, Michael Brown blew it, not knowing any better. And like I say, the next few days we're backpedaling. So they've been working at this control for a long time. But here is then you've got what I call military science. They know fully well what's going on. And these are the scientists who are in gag orders. If they said one word to anybody about anything, they would be killed, and their families would be killed, and everything terrible would happen to them. But anyway, they work maybe in NASA or something, or for one of the agencies. It's hard to say where their money actually comes from, but the CIA controls that. And the CIA took over NASA big time when Dan Golden moved in 1991 to cover up the Planet X debacle, where Robert Harrington had literally discovered Planet X, which became the nucleus of Hale-Bopp. I've got a book about that whole scenario. So anyway, there again, the nucleus of Hale-Bopp was a planet which had a moon orbiting it. It was discovered in 1991 by the Naval Observatory, and literally was called Planet X. And anyway, I talk about that, Tom Van Flandern, and the search for Planet X in the 1980s. Harrington finally discovers it in '89 with his trip to New Zealand, and then takes enough photographs until 1991 they have an orbit, and then they discover that it has a moon. Harrington was the same guy who discovered Charon, the moon of Pluto, and here he's discovering another planet with a moon, but it goes dark because that is the predicted. The people at the Vatican know very well that this is the predicted wormwood, and it's on a direct collision course with Earth at that time, when it became the comet Hale-Bopp, as it erupted into this full-blown comet with a moon going around it. The CIA shut that down in 1991, created this total misinformation campaign around Nancy Lieder, crazy lady talks to aliens, put the date of the Planet X, May 15, 2003, and completely obfuscated the fact that the real Planet X was up there in the sky all the time. You could see it in the daytime sky for 6 years, becoming a planet, and that was Hale-Bopp. That was Planet X, and it had moved out of the solar system, but a very successful campaign, which my work was central to that. It was insanity, the 15 years or more that whole Planet X just, misinformation campaign raged. But they had to keep that. Through all of that, they maintained this dirty snowball comet model. Why? Because they needed it now to maintain this alien, this idea that comets are not comets, they're alien technology. And they need that because they need the alien presence to bring in the New World Government. And who's doing this? So let me go through this scenario again. That the CIA is the police force of the World Bank. They have nothing to do with the United States at all. They control a lot that happens in the presidency. Since Kennedy, they blew his head off because he was not playing ball with the boys. And the CIA is the police force of the World Bank. Who's the World Bank? It's the Jesuit-operated bank, the Vatican Bank. A friend of mine who was, let's say, deceased, was murdered, was Robert David Steele. Go look at his information. Or Leo Lyons Zagami, another person who will give you a lot of information about who is actually operating the Vatican Bank. They got their wealth, the real wealth that they're using. The secret society line goes way back. But the real wealth they got was when they pillaged the New World for gold. Ships crossing the ocean, Spain, Portugal, Italy, the Netherlands, primarily Spain and England, pillaging the Americas for gold. Massive, massive amounts of gold, and that's still the basis of the World Bank wealth. And entire ships ballasted with gold, hundreds of them, and it all went back to the Vatican. And so the the effort to unify the world under a one world government. Remember George Bush Sr.? He's the 1,000 points of light speech, and he goes very confidently. He said, "And we will succeed." He's talking about bringing in the new world order, the one world government, and we know from Werner von Braun that the technique, the method to bring in the new world order was the alien issue. Why? Because, doggone it, we got to have this one world government. The UN is in on this. The other, the World Economic Forum. All of these groups are a lot of the chaos going on today. How do they manage? They manage by chaos, by creating chaos. They find a hot point and they blow it up. A lot of the paid actors that you see, if you look at the news, I don't care what issues going on, you got people in the street, a lot of those people are paid. There are people making $100,000 a year being a paid actor, going from place to place, holding up signs. Here, hold this sign up, march down that street, and they do it, and they get paid. Turn in the time card. And so that's what's going on. But all of this is part of what you might call the Communist Manifesto. Create chaos, create difficulties, put mother against son, father against daughter, brother against brother, cousin against cousin, until it's just everything's in an uproar, and that's when it's easiest to come in and just take over. Like the Russian Revolution, the perfect example of how this happens. And so the alien issue is central to ushering in the one world government. But they're trying to get Trump to come up to the podium and admit this now because they're worried. They're worried that it's going to fail, that the word is going to get out what they're doing, and that after COVID, the people aren't buying stuff anymore. They're not taking the government line or the party line. I think a lot of people woke up during the COVID event that, hey, this government ain't doing, what they're doing is pretty much illegal. And people they wanted to help. They wanted to get, do everything they could. They were distancing, wearing their masks, getting their shots, some of them. And a lot of people didn't. And now the other people are going, hey, wait a minute, what did I get my whole family shots for? And these untested shots, and now they're having medical problems. So people are getting wise, let's put it, to this whole deal. And I know that the one world government people are getting real worried. They're getting real worried that their gig is not going to come about because the public is just waking up to it. And so anyway, what I'm doing on this show is outlining this whole scenario. So once again, the CIA and the Mossad and the MK6 in England, all of these intel agencies are working together to try and control things. And the reason they need Trump to come up to the podium now and not in June is because they want to push the schedule ahead. Because right now, I think they still can pull it off. If they wait a few months, not possible. And they're getting worried. They're very paranoid people. People that do this kind of thing to keep their power are extremely paranoid. They're schizophrenic narcissists. That's, if you understand what that is. Take a whole families of these 7,000 of these people trying to operate and manage the world. And I've met people in these families personally, so I know they exist. I know how they operate, and that they're, when things are going good, they're going great guns. They have $1 million. They have no problem with money. They have all the money that in the world, literally. In their families, I figured out that there's probably about 7,000 people. And so that would be around And these are family lines. You can actually go online and to discuss these on and on and on, who the families are. A lot of them you don't see, you never hear their names. And that's one of the rules too, is if you see their names, if you see their faces in the news, they are not ahead of anything. They are clogs in the wheel. The Clintons, the Bushes, they're not top of anything. They are people who got their earthly reward for doing the bidding of the world controllers. And, and I could list a lot of other people. The people in the, I could go on and on, but I'm not going to. I think you get the idea. But just in review, the central core issue here is the alien issue. And if people understood real science, for example, I have 2 propulsion systems that I designed that use electrical currents and voltages that are in outer space, kind of like a swimmer would use water. And so the idea is that you can move around in space without propulsion systems like jets or rockets. Those are inertial propulsion systems where you have to carry the mass along, heat it up with some kind of engine which weighs a lot, and then shoot it out a nozzle, and that makes you go in the other direction. That's an inertial propulsion system. You're not going to get any place with inertial propulsion systems. So you have to have non-inertial propulsion systems. And in the 1982, I was in Los Angeles with venture capital groups looking for funding for my designs because I was the only person on the planet that really understood the concept of the electric fields, where they were, how they worked, and the electric currents and the resulting magnetic fields. And so with that knowledge, I was able to design propulsion systems that worked along with these in unit, and this is the way you then travel in outer space. You don't go to the moon with a rocket. It's that's very primitive. But there again, let's look at the Artemis program. It's just a dog and pony show. They roll it out there. Oh, they got some problems with the leaks in helium, hydrogen. Let's roll it back. And maybe we'll postpone it a little bit. A dog and pony show. That's not how you go into space at all. And it's like all of this stuff is like flat Earth. In the Middle Ages, from the pulpit, the preachers would teach the populace, the general public, that the Earth was flat, and that if you went out there on the ocean, you were going to fall off on a waterfall and it would fall into the abyss. There were fire-breathing dragons and tremendous winds and storms, and you would die. So don't go there. And that's space today. Space is being managed like the flat Earth of the Middle Ages. They don't want you to go there. And it's the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, has all kinds of red tape now. As soon as Burt Rutan showed that it was very easy to go into outer space with his Spaceship One, did it with under $1 million. Takes 3 people into space 2 times in a row, something NASA could never ever do. And all of a sudden, the FAA gets all over it. You got to have all these regulations and safety. We can't have people dying in space. They could give a rat's behind about people's safety. What they didn't want was people figuring out how easy it is to go in space. When the first commercial flight with Burt Rutan, they weren't wearing helmets and oxygen tubes, and they were wearing like jumpsuits. It was like getting in your car and going up into space and coming back same afternoon and having a beer with your buddies. And NASA's got these 3 guys with space suits and a rocket the size of the Empire State Building. Oh my goodness. And people buy it. People go down to the Cape and watch rockets go off. That's a dog and pony show, boys and girls. The shuttle, the whole program. It was all a giant, and it is a giant dog and pony show to keep you, the public, from going into space.
This has been Master of Science with host James McCanny. Join us each week as James will delve into historical figures such as Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, and the great mathematicians as we explore the history of man, Earth, and our universe as you've never seen it before. Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern,